And good evening, and welcome to the January 24th meeting of the Murfreesboro City School Board. We're glad to have those of you that are with us tonight in our presence, and we're glad to have those that are at home or somewhere else watching us on television. And at this time, I'm going to ask you to please stand as we'll welcome Reagan Warren, a fourth grade student from Northfield, to lead us in our pledge. During our moment of silence, we would like to ask you to remember the family of Jane Poole, a longtime educator in our system and also within our city with the university and other ways also during our moment of silence. Reagan?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, for liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, you have the agenda in front of you, board members, and have had a chance to look at it before tonight. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Renier. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. King. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? And there is none. Thank you. Communications? Ms. Trail?
Hi, and happy School Board Week. Black Fox Elementary, as you know, broke ground this month on its new 110 classroom expansion. So we're proud to see that dirt moving and classes will be open there, hopefully in the fall of 2017. Mitchell-Nielsen Schools would like to thank the members of the Third Baptist Church for spending their Martin Luther King Day cleaning the storage areas at Mitchell-Nielsen. So we appreciate them giving up their holiday. Murfreesboro City Schools would also like to thank Assurian employees at the Smyrna location for their donation of $500, along with clothing to the Indigent Care Fund as part of their Compassion Care initiative. Congratulations to Heather Knox, fifth grade teacher at Northfield, who had her article Using Writing Strategies in Math to Increase Metacognition for the Gifted Learner published in Gifted Child Today. This is a quarterly peer-reviewed academic journal, so congratulations to Heather on that. Also, Kim Frank has been contacted by the State Department of Education, and MCS has been asked to sit on a panel at the State Student Discipline Conference to talk about our work with discipline, restorative practices, and adverse childhood experiences. Congratulations to Christine Winterbrook. She is one of our gifted specialists. She will be presenting on February 7th in Denver at the Institute for the Development of Gifted Conference. Christine is very near to completing her doctoral program at the University of Denver. And as you know, Christine is started with Murfreesboro City Schools this year. John Pittard Elementary and Discovery School have been selected as a model demonstration school by the Tennessee Behavior Supports Project at Vanderbilt University. That's something that we just found out about today, so we wanted to add that to your notes. Also, I want to go back and just say happy School Board Appreciation Week to you once again. We will be celebrating you all week long. Coming in February, we will be celebrating our school counselors during School Counselor Appreciation Week. And that's your communications, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. And I think I can speak, and each board member may speak, for the wonderful gifts and the things that we have received tonight from all the schools and students and teachers and everybody involved. We appreciate the work that you do, and we know that it is very meaningful for the young people in our school system. Do we have any other board member like to make a comment? I knew Ms. Smith.
I know, it's over the top. I mean, I have this beautiful flowers. I have cards from so many different kids, and I love it. I just love the artwork. I love their creativity. And I appreciate all the teachers. We don't do anything compared to what the teachers do, and for y'all to think of us in this way, I really appreciate it.
Okay. Any other comments?
I thought it was really sweet that we were greeted in the elevators with some of the signs. That was really sweet.
We rock.
We rock.
Every year, I don't think it they can top what they did the year before, and I get surprised every year.
Thank you, kiddos.
Yes.
Thank you, thank you.
Thanks to everybody.
It was very much appreciated.
Consent items. Do we have a motion to approve the consent items?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Have a second.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Ballard. Any questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? And there is none. Action items. Dr. Gilbert?
Mr. Ringstaff.
It's my honor and pleasure to list the teachers up for tenure as of the 2015-2016 school year. I'm going to read what it takes to become a tenure teacher. The following employees who are in a position for which a teaching license is required have met all of the requirements to attain tenure in Board Policy PER 16. These employees have completed at least 5 years with Murfreesboro City Schools and have obtained an overall performance effectiveness level of above expectations or significantly above expectations for the last 2 consecutive years. So, teachers, if you're here tonight, please stand up when I call your name and remain standing until we get done. Jeannie Beats from John Pittard. Samantha Bowden from Reeves Rogers. Wow. Jessica Burns from Overall Creek. Julie Castor from Scales. Tanya Clayton from Hopgood. Amber Cook from Northfield. Jessica Davenport from Black Fox. Luke Dickerson from Northfield. Kayla Embry from Scales. Rachel Everett from Scales. Kim Gamble from Black Fox. Laurie Grant from Black Fox. Amber Green from Scales. John Harding from Scales. Heather Knox from Northfield. Zan Lasco from Scales. Christy LeMay from Northfield. Amanda Mesteller from Mitchell Nelson. Mary Orcutt from Northfield. Sherry Purdy from Hopgood. Amy Stevenson from Reeves Rogers. Ryan Stewart from Scales. Rebecca Sublett, Overall Creek. Kenesha Sullivan, Northfield. Brenda Taylor from Northfield. Kristen Trinan from Hopgood. Pam Truitt from Northfield. And Charlotte Young from Discovery. It is our recommendation for you to approve these individuals for tenure.
You have heard the recommendation. Do I have a motion to accept these and grant these fine educators for tenure?
I happily move to do so.
Thank you, Mr. Ballard. Do I have a second?
I will happily second.
Thank you, Mr. King. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? And there is none. I know it's not an easy task, and I do commend you very much. I know the hard work that goes into it, not only to obtain tenure, but also the job that you do every day. Just because you receive tenure doesn't mean that you stop doing what you're doing, and we know that, and we applaud you, and thank you very much for the work you do with our young people. I have one request, if you don't mind, Board, before we start with the readings on our policies, if we could have the report on our audit. Is there anybody object to that?
No.
All right, Mr. Anderson, I guess that's in your ballpark.
Yes, sir.
Before you start that, teachers, if you're welcome to stay, but if you want to leave, because I know you've got a hard day ahead again tomorrow, so if you'd like to leave now before we start the rest of it, but if you want to stay for the audit, we'll be happy for you to.
Don't worry about the people on the elevator taking rolls.
Thank you all for being here.
All right, Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, sir. We have your annual audit report for you this evening, and the audit team is here from Matlock and Clements. We have Andy Matlock and Eric Clements are here, and I believe, Andy, you're going to be the one presenting this evening, sir, and he'll go over the audit and answer any questions you might have.
Good evening. Certainly hoping for the cheer, but I'll take what I can get. I'm here, as Mr. Anderson stated, on behalf of Matlock Clements. I'm here to present 2 audit reports for you tonight, the internal school funds audit and then the general purpose Board of Education audit. I'll start with the internal school funds. We issued our report on October 13, 2016, of course, for the 2015-2016 school year. In that report, we issued an unmodified opinion, which is a clean opinion. It means that the financial statements that were contained in that report, in our opinion, were fairly stated in all material respects in accordance with the laws and rules and regulations that they're prescribed to follow. As far as a few numbers, total assets for the internal school funds was just a little under $800,000 for the year. Total revenues were $1.55 million. Total expenses $1.356 million, which provided an increase in fund balance in the combined internal school funds of $195,000. And that ending fund balance was $793,000. We also issued our report on internal control over financial reporting and compliance in accordance with government auditing standards. And there were no material weaknesses, no material noncompliance identified in that report. That was basically the internal school funds report in a nutshell. Are there any questions for us for that report?
Mr. Ballard?
I guess this is for you or any of the other board members to answer. As I read this for the first time, I'm understanding that each of the schools do have monies which they manage. Is that correct? And so in the case of Mitchell Nielsen, where they're showing they've got maybe $52,000, is that discretionary funds?
Which specific? I mean, the internal school funds in general are separated between general and restricted, depending on how the money is brought in. If it's brought in with restriction, without restriction. I can check on the specific numbers, but as far as internal school funds, those are the monies generated at the school level, fees, field trips, any sort of athletics, donations, those type things.
So those are monies then, and Gary, maybe this is for you, that they have available to use discretionary for improvements or for field trips or whatever. So that's their stash money they can dig into, right?
We prefer not to use the word stash to describe their money, but yeah.
I'm from East Tennessee, so.
Yes, that's the money that is in the control of the school principals based on whether it's a restricted account or a general account for them to use for their school, betterment of their school and for the best interest of their students.
Okay.
It's generated by those students and for the benefit of those students for that specific year.
I understand. That's good.
Any additional questions on internal school funds? Yes, ma'am.
So, are you looking at the page that?
Are you on 41 or?
Okay.
Wes, where were you? Okay.
Page were you on?
Just a moment here. I closed the book.
Okay, I see it.
It's page 13. So it says fund balances as of July 1st, and this got each school list. Well, that page has Northfield, Overall Creek, Reeves Rogers, and each are showing that they've got, some account balance.
I see. Thank you. I just didn't know where you were getting.
Yeah. That's all I had.
Good.
For the next one?
Any other questions? All right.
All right. Now I'll move on to the other Board of Education audit report. That report was issued on November 8th, 2016, and that one also received an unmodified opinion. Again, meaning that the financial statements presented in that report were fairly stated, in our opinion, based on the prescribed accounting standards, auditing standards, compliance manuals, so forth. A few highlights in that report: change in net position for the overall audit was $10.3 million. Assets and deferred outflows totaled a little under $130 million for the year, and they exceeded your liabilities and deferred inflows by $51.49 million, which resulted in an increase, as I mentioned, in net position of $10.3 million. Expenditures, there were quite a few expenditures for capital assets. They totaled $13.6 million. They included expenditures for technology, various expansions and repairs, and then the major expansion you had at Hobgood during that 15-16 school year. We also issued a report on internal control over compliance and financial reporting, and did not identify any material weaknesses or material noncompliance issues, significant deficiencies. And also in that report, since it's a single audit and there are federal monies coming in, we also issued a report on compliance over major programs, and that too did not identify any material weaknesses, significant deficiencies, or material noncompliance issues. Are there any questions on that?
Any questions on that, on the report for Murfreesboro City Schools? No questions. Thank you, sir, very much. Mr. Anderson, job well done.
Thank you very much. Obviously, it's the finance staff and the school bookkeepers that do all the work. I just sit up here and smile.
We very much appreciate you, or appreciate the relationship we have, and being able to work with Mr. Anderson and his staff, and it's even the schools, the bookkeepers, going out to the schools and talking with them, the principals. We very much enjoy. They don't always enjoy the auditor coming, but we enjoy and appreciate the relationship we have, and it's a mutual relationship. We try to help strengthen internal control in every aspect. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, our next item on our agenda is second reading of policies. Ms. Baker, how do you want to handle this? You want to approve all of them as in lump sum, or do we need to do them individually? Or if we have questions on any of them, what's our procedure?
I know typically you do them on consent agenda for second reading. If there are any that you feel need to be pulled off and discussed individually, you can do that and then approve the others in one motion.
Does that mean we pulled off the fundraising?
That one's going to be for your first reading.
Yeah, that was by itself.
These are just the ones listed for second reading that you would want to break out if voted in one vote, or you can pull some out if you feel there needs to be more discussion.
Can we ask general questions pertaining to these policies and then approve them all at one time?
Yes.
Rather than having to ask questions about each one?
You can
However.
ask the questions at once.
Okay. All right, policy, and I'm just going through a list, and I'm FM 15. That was one we were going to delete, correct? Let me find it.
The FM 15 was rescinded and replaced by 1.601.
701.
Okay. I know we asked last time we met when we were going over these policies about the charter fee, and am I correct that that amount is state mandated?
Yes, I double checked, and the maximum you can charge under state statute is $500.
Okay. And then we, on policy 1.801, that was the one where we were talking about the length of the school day.
Right.
And we had recommended that we put that instead of minutes, hours, and I see that has been done. So that's from there. Mr. Settlers?
The question I asked on first reading on policy 1.803, tobacco-free school. I think Ms. Baker was going to check into the vaping aspect. That was my question. Because the policy talks about smokeless tobacco.
And I found that some people are adding in vapor devices and trying to use that terminology to make it broader, since, you know, the tools being used seem to change every day. So I've heard them add, as far as smokeless devices, vapor devices have been added into some policies. So right now, you mentioned dealing with smokeless tobacco, electronic cigarettes. So if you wanted to add and vapor
I'd like to see that in there.
devices.
That's part of my concern.
What is the difference between the electronic cigarettes and the vapor?
Well, some of the vapors they're not tobacco. There are other forms of, there are other inhalants, as far as I'm concerned. So they're not tobacco, so that's why I was questioning, because it only says smokeless tobacco and electronic cigarettes, which could still contain tobacco, but it doesn't say anything about vaping devices. And those are, you ask some people, that it's just fruit juices, you know, but still, I don't think it should be, I think it should be included in a prohibition that we have.
So you're saying the electronic cigarette and the vapor are two different items?
They could be.
Could be.
Could be.
Okay, okay.
And if you'll recall, when you first adopted this policy, one of the ideas was, because of the age of the children, you did not want adults modeling that behavior in the school building, even if it was a device that didn't have tobacco associated with it. That was part of the earlier discussion.
Mr. King?
I agree with adding the vapor devices. I've seen them used in restaurants when restaurants are no smoking, and it's kind of confusing to somebody. Is it electronic cigarette? And I think electronic cigarettes were first. But I also noticed that in this policy we specifically mentioned sporting events. Do we need to mention just any school assembly or program, school meeting?
Well, the sporting events language has to be in there under the state statutes.
Okay.
That's why that's specifically pointed out. I think school meetings, school activities, those are encompassed in what you have written here.
Okay, so it's assumed to be included, any school function?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
I could just see any time we had a crowd of people, say, in a gym for a program. So.
And the sporting events was dealing with the more outside
School
athletic
hours.
areas. Right. And the statutes specifically required no tobacco with those if a school event's going on.
If we add the vapor, then that will also be added into our signage?
Like 15 and 16?
I think
No signage at the school?
Signage, let me find it.
it's, the signage is the very last line, in line 16 is what's required.
Yeah.
Okay.
The whole policy isn't on a sign. I mean,
Well, it just says in the signage, employees and other persons visiting the school, the use of tobacco and tobacco product is forbidden. So it doesn't say anything there about,
What line are you on?
I'm on line 13, on the staff recommended policy 1.803.
That might be that I'm not, well, yeah.
Yeah, that's coming straight out of TCA. Kelly?
And that's, you've got down there the Environmental Tobacco Smoke and the Pro-Children Act. Those two statutes prohibit tobacco products from being utilized on school property or around school activities involving children. And that's the statute that requires there be language about no tobacco use on school property in accordance with those statutes. Now, it's at the board's discretion as to whether you want to expand the prohibition and the signage to encompass the others. And that Mr. Anderson could speak to what that would entail to have to redo the signs.
Be expensive to redo the signs. We can do them. I don't know the exact cost, but I can get that for you.
Well, it just seemed like if we're going to include in the policy prohibiting the use of tobacco products, electronic cigarettes, and vapor, then I would think that would need to be noted also in the signage. What do you think, Board?
What about any type of smoking, somehow including any smoking?
And that's what, line 16, that's what state law requires, is smoking is prohibited on all school grounds.
What do the signs say now?
Smoking is prohibited on all.
It's going to follow TCA. It's going to be what TCA says.
Well, what do they say?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay.
It should be that last line.
Isn't it line 16?
Because that's what's in law.
Line 16.
Mr. King?
I've been places before that either had handwritten signs, piece of paper, handwritten. This means vaping too, or they've gotten a Word document and gone to and just typed it up so it's not handwritten. We mean no vaping, and they tape it to the no smoking sign. I don't know if there's any generic signage that can be bought at an office supply store or that means this doesn't include vaping or electronic cigarettes or something like that, to be clear.
I think the signs are outside.
Like posted out on the outside of the door?
They're
or
outside the building,
Okay.
so it wouldn't, it'd have to be.
Okay. I know what you're saying, not in the parking lot, but in the...
Outside of the building.
They're on the outside,
By the door.
they're on signpost
Yes.
outside in the
Outside
parking
the building.
lots.
But it just says no smoking.
Yeah.
My only concern is, if in our policy, if we're going to mention electronic cigarettes and vapor, then can somebody say, it's not on the sign, so I'm good?
But we could at least give our principals the authority that if they see it, this gives them the authority to stop it.
Let us see what we can come up with and come back with
I would like to see what you can come up with to include the electronic cigarettes and the vapors. Because as Mr. Settles mentions, there is a lot of difference. Right, Dave?
This has been an issue that's come up before in some of my areas that it says no smoking. Well, it doesn't say you can't vape.
Okay.
And I've had to tell people, well, I'm letting you know at my discretion that you can't.
Right.
And it's much easier if it is on the sign.
Could we have that last paragraph, Kelly, that's there with signs? Could we have something about signs shall be posted, and I wouldn't do district facilities, I would do on school grounds to notify parents, employees, and all other persons visiting the schools of something like of this policy.
Mm-hmm.
And that way it's open enough that we can put what we need to put, or what verbiage.
I think that would be fine if you just put that language.
Okay. Okay, and
I'm going to make a motion here pertaining to this, that we pull this from second reading tonight until we can find out what we're going to do with our signage. Just this 1.803. I'll make that a suggestion. So that when we see the signage, we'll know what it is and what it says.
Go to a third reading.
Well, no, we're just
It won't get a second reading.
this won't be a second reading tonight on
Okay.
this one policy, and we
I
can
got
do
you.
that, right, Ms. Baker?
Okay.
Okay, so I'll make that as a motion. I'll need to have a second.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Mr. King. Now, any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
All right.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay. Any other questions on policies? On the policy pertaining to deductions, 2.803, let me get to it.
I had questions on that.
2.803.
Oh, there.
Here we go.
Do we need to, in one policy that we looked at, it mentioned the different deductions, payroll deductions.
That was in PER 10. That now has been put into the administrative directive. You should have your payroll deductions 2.803 and then an AD right behind it, Mr. Campbell.
Okay,
I have a question about that then.
all right. Okay, you have
May
a
I?
question? Yes, you may.
Dr. Gilbert, then are you saying basically all of these deductions, which can be authorized by the employees, are now on the AD, so they still are in place?
Right.
Such as association dues? Because I know that was a big issue a few years ago as to
Well,
whether or not.
that we no longer can do, right, Ralph?
Correct.
Because
Is
the
that
law
state
changed.
law?
Yes.
I don't see Ralph, but,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
okay. We can't rescind ourselves from that one either, huh?
No, that's the state law, yes.
Okay. Not a good thing. What about United Way and all the others? They're still available for deduction?
In the AD, yes, ma'am.
Pardon?
In the AD,
Okay. What is the unreimbursed medical expenses? Is that the
Section 125, the flexible spending account.
flexible spending? Okay.
All right. Any other questions on any policies? Then we're ready to vote on second reading for all except the one pertaining to tobacco, and that's 1.803.
We are ready.
Do we need to make a motion to accept?
We will need to make a motion to approve on second reading.
I move that we accept all of these second reading except for the tobacco-free schools.
Okay. Have a second to the motion?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Settles. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposition? And there is none. Thank you very much.
Okay, your next policy is the Board Policy 6.702. And following discussion from our last meeting, I did add designee on page 2, line 8, where it talks about the fundraising companies can obtain a permission in writing from the director of schools or designee. Also, if you have the one that we're recommending, the black ink basically is coming from the old policy. The red ink is from the TSBA recommended policy. And there is one additional change on the very last paragraph. So on the 4th page, where it says employees shall not engage in online fundraising, there should be added there for personal gain in their official capacity. It's kind of, for whatever reason, that was left off. So on your last page of the recommended policy, the first line after the word fundraising. So employees shall not engage in online fundraising for personal gain in their official capacity as district employees. That should have been there.
Question, Ms. Renier? I'm still trying to find it.
I know, it's
Okay.
hard to find.
Okay.
It wasn't in the
On that-
box
Way down there.
second reading
Page
tonight, was it?
66 and the,
No, this is first reading
The
tonight.
page numbering, I think.
no, it's,
is-
that, there you go.
Yeah, I know.
That's it.
I was going to ask if on these last couple of lines, Dr. Gilbert, would we need to have anything that might say employees shall not engage, however you said it, for personal gain.
Right.
Would there need to be a line in the policy that might say something which could lead to such and such consequences?
Kelly, I'll defer that to you.
I think in our general policies relative to discipline of employees, if they violate any policy, then they run the risk of being subject to some sort of disciplinary action. So,
By disciplinary action, that could mean us, or it could mean a police department or whatever. Does that cover it?
I'm not sure what outside.
Persons could be involved.
Yes, right now we're focusing on our policies and our rules for them to follow.
Right. I just, because I know of another situation in another state that I've been apprised about, and someone was embezzling money. And so I just wondered if there needed to be some kind of verbiage in there
That would encompass a crime that they've
Right.
committed that would be handled through state laws.
Can you give me an example of online fundraising?
GoFundMe. There's another one called Adopt a Classroom that we just ran across this last week. So it really has to do with It's primarily used when teachers are wanting something extra from their classroom and they want to go to a GoFundMe account, or there's several out there. Those are the two that are most recent that I can think of.
Well, I've even seen one on like someone you could consider online would be.
Well,
like
yeah,
Facebook.
it could be. Yeah, it could be
Someone
anything.
said, we need some money for this, then that would be
Yep.
online.
Yeah.
Please go to our page.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
the ones that I've seen, like I said, most recently this year. In fact, one came across my desk a couple days ago.
Also, aren't there some that, let's say it's gift wrapping paper or whatever? I always thought that if you didn't make the deadline or you wanted to order something extra, they could also do that online. I thought.
Okay. Mr. King?
When we say lotteries, that's also just another way of saying raffle. Is that correct? Okay. So raffles are prohibited.
The state law there are a lot of different attorney general's opinions that give specific definitions to when you cross the line, and it's considered a lottery that's prohibited under under state law. So I would have to see the details of the situation to know when it's crossed that line and look at it in conjunction with those attorney general opinions.
Okay.
Ms. Smith?
I think he explained this to me last time, but on line 14 on number 12, funds derived from fundraising events may not be used for A, memberships of any kind, and B, staff gifts and meals. Are PTAs not throwing teacher lunches, or
That's on the,
am I in the wrong spot on that?
I think that's
You got it.
the PTA, it's not a school. Separate.
Is it because it's the PTA? The PTA can do it, but not any other kind of
Right.
booster
This-
club
this
that falls
falls-
under the same, okay.
Right.
So, and the other thing is, on the old policy, there was a form
Right.
that, I really didn't think the form was important to the policy, but is that a part of this new policy too?
Kelly, in my opinion, that would go into an AD, because that form can
I mean,
change.
that was too-
It's
that's-
too detailed.
That's too detailed. Okay, that's why I just wanted to double check that.
I lost you on that when you said,
I did too.
There's, on the policy now, there's like a form,
One
a
that's-
fundraising
Yeah.
request
PTO
form.
re-
So
yes, now,
that doesn't belong in a policy. So I just wanted to make sure that it wasn't attached to
Okay,
this new
It's not.
version.
so this the one titled PTA organization, this does not apply to a classroom or a second grade class or the school. That's literally for the PTA.
If I'm not mistaken, Mr. Anderson, we have a similar form that comes to us, though, for approval. If it's, well, we do if it's a PTO, do we?
They don't come to me. The PTO and PTA is one because it's an outside organization supporting our school, and you need to approve it to make sure it's sanctioned by the school to do that.
Right.
The last thing we want to do is make it hard for the PTA, PTO.
Mr. Ballard?
In this, does it, and maybe I just overlooked it, but how does it handle the situation where a teacher or someone from central office, has a Girl Scout and they just bring Girl Scout cookies to the school and set them on their desk, and people know they can get one for $2 and maybe it's $3 now, I don't know, but anyway, they know they can get it.
$3.50.
Yeah,
It's
I'd like to find that Girl Scout, yeah.
All right, wait, we're not selling tonight. Let's wait.
That's not a,
I don't want
that,
that to be, is that a violation of this policy?
this policy just addresses fundraising activities for the actual school or school activities. I believe there is another policy, I don't have all of them in front of me right now, that deals with solicitation on school grounds, and it would be covered in that policy. That may be in the personnel section. I'd have to go back and double check that, but when we get to reviewing those policies, then that issue would come up at that point.
All right, any other question on any of the policies? Mr. King?
Starting at line 5 where it says general guidelines. And I understand bullet point 1 and bullet point 2. We get to line 12 for bullet point 3. All fundraising activities, including online fundraising activities, must have written approval from the principal and director of schools or designee. A fundraiser form will be available in the office and must be completed. The authorization request shall contain the following information. And it has A, B, C, D, and I understand that. My question is, or my thought or observation was, is there a deadline? I need to turn this in. We're going to start fundraising tomorrow. Here it is. Or do I need to turn this in a week before we do this? Does there need to be, there's really no direction on when to turn this in, or that's just how I interpret this?
And if we needed that, then I would put that in an AD.
Okay.
Because that,
I didn't think about that.
administrative directive, with the board policy, you want it broader because it may change depending, and
An AD is easier to change?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was just something after I read this a few times, I got thinking about that, and I thought, a deadline, if you will. I mean, gosh, you're going to start this afternoon? I'm going to ask a different question, if that's okay. Is there anything spelled out that says the students can go stand in front of Kroger or Walmart, like the Girl Scouts selling cookies? Is that allowed?
I'm thinking that's under, I was just dealing with that a couple of weeks ago. I don't know whether that's under solicitation or under AD, but the approval for that would have to come through. So I think, Kelly, wouldn't it?
Well, that, y'all do have that door-to-door sales are strongly discouraged and not endorsed.
Right, but I was thinking
mean,
a Saturday standing in, we
parents-
set up a card table in front of Kroger. You go to this Kroger and you go to that Kroger. I'm going to be at the one over here. And we
that
set
may
up a
be-
card table with 2 or 3 parents and 5 or 6 kids on a Saturday. And that was what I was thinking. Is
don't-
that allowed?
Well, I don't believe the policy's gotten deep into those
Okay, that'd
details.
be handled by the AD then.
The policy's gone to say that we discourage door-to-door sales. So if the
Correct.
parents, in lieu of door-to-door sales, want to get with a group of their child's friends and try to
And that's
sell the
that way it's not
smart cards
door-to-door,
this-
but-
another way, and that might,
Okay.
and that might be an issue that could be addressed in AD.
Typically, if there's any question that the principals have, they'll just give me a call.
Okay.
Say- And the same thing really with the timeline. It's kind of like field trips. If for whatever reason they don't have it ahead of time, they'll just call and say, Linda, I need approval for it.
Okay.
And I know there have been times when we've come to the board and I've given you a call or an email and said, we need this approved, I'll bring it to you next board meeting. And so that's the way I would handle that.
Okay. I had another. All right. Am I right? And y'all talked about this last week, but if I understand right, a school can have 4 active fundraisers, but as many passive as they wish. Okay.
Now, wait a minute, say that again?
A school can have only 4 active fundraisers per school year, but they can have as many passive fundraisers. It's unlimited, if you will. And Mr. Anderson's example was like you go to a restaurant and they'll donate a portion of the proceeds to the school. That's a passive. But a school can only have 4 active where the students are involved in the fundraiser.
During the day.
So
It's the taking of instructional time.
Okay. And it's possible that my class could have an active fundraiser, that counts as 1. And then the second grade could have a fundraiser, that's our second fundraiser and then the school has one. Now we're up to 3 active fundraisers this school year. Am I right? Is my thinking right?
Do you want to address and explain what that looks like in a school?
In our description of active versus passive, active means it takes instructional time away and it's school-based, meaning the principal is going to have to approve it. So my assumption is the principal is not going to approve an active fundraiser for just say a second grade level or something like that because it's school-wide. Passive fundraisers aren't, as you point out, the example is if they're going to have eat dinner at such and such restaurant, they're going to give a donation, or if Kroger has, if you buy so much, it's going to go into that, or collecting soup cans.
Box top lids.
Right. And the 4 is 4 total, and they can be split like 2 for the PTO, 2 for the school, or 3 for the school, 1 for the PTO, any way they want. The principal wants to control that split. And we count, I think it's 2 picture-taking things as 1 fundraiser, because sometimes they'll take a fall and a spring. We want to count that as just 1 rather than 2.
Okay. And this was a point brought up last week, too. So a PTA, PTO fundraiser does or does not count as an active. Or I was under the impression that a PTA, PTO fundraiser does not count as the school's active fundraiser, that's separate. But it does?
Can or it doesn't have to. It just depends on how it's. If they have say they have an assembly and they bring all the kids together and say we're going to have a wonderful cookie sale and we're going to generate revenue on this. Well, once they take classroom instruction time, then it counts as active fundraiser, removing a child's educational opportunity there.
Gotcha.
If they do it passively and they don't have an assembly like that, then it's fine. Then it's called a passive fundraiser.
We're having a Halloween carnival after hours at night. That would be a passive.
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
Good question. Mr. Settles?
Yeah, I was just going to mention it. Passive simply has to do with the fact of how much instruction time is going to be taken from the student. So if the PTA or PTO has a meeting on Thursday night and all the parents receive a flyer for the current fundraiser, that's still considered passive because it's not involving the students being taken away from their class time. They can have as many of those as they want. Okay.
All right. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Seconded.
Thank you, Ms. Bernier. Thank you, Ms. Smith, for the second. We are approving the fundraising policy.
6.7.
6.702. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposition? And there is none. Thank you very much.
You ready? Okay.
I
All right, your next action item is the school calendar. I do have one correction, and it is not in the days itself. It is in the stockpile days. So on the second page where it says the first 9 days out of those 2 lines, it is the first 11 days, and I'll explain why. For inclusion, whether it will be made up according to state law through the 7. Last year, we had taken 2 days as professional development days at the beginning of the year. I do not plan on doing that next year, and so that changes that back to 11 days instead of 9 days. So that is the one correction, and I'll have that corrected before we post that. But that's the only difference. As far as changing the calendar itself, it does not impact what you have before you. In looking at the calendar, again, we are as close to the county, I think, as we can get. There were some things that our district feels pretty strong about. having, and that those things happen to be the parent-teacher conference days, having them during the day. I think that's extremely important. So when you look at our calendar and the county calendar, those 2 days are really the differences. The other one is that we did take one of the PLC days the county will be out next year, which is on your March 8th date, and we are not going to use that day as a PLC day. We're using that as one of our parent-teacher conference days. So you do have your 2 parent-teacher conference days. One, and I think this is handy-dandy the way it worked out, is the day after Halloween on November the 1st. The other is on March the 8th. You have the beginning of the year. We actually start one day before the county. They have their half day for the county students on August the 7th. Our half day is going to come on the Friday before. And then we will be ending on the same day that the county ends. There is one day that is different, another day that is different, and that is the county is going back on the Friday of the 2-week winter break. Just don't want to do that. And I ran that by the principals and ran it by some teachers too. I'd rather that we just wait. I understand that they're having that as a work day. To tell you the truth, the teacher's going to be working that weekend even if we had that work day there. Mm-hmm. So I'd rather just go ahead and give them those full 2 weeks there, and that we not start until the January the 8th, that the teachers and students start together. But I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have about any of this.
Okay, Ms. Smith?
Well, I am sure that the city teachers appreciate that Friday being off rather than going in on that Friday. Tell me again why we can't start the same day.
Actually, we're making up. If you look at it, we have a parent-teacher conference day that we have worked in. And so when you look at this, we have to have 180 student days. We have to have 5 administrative days and 5 in-service days. And so when you look at the schedule, then that changes us a little bit because of that.
Okay, so, and that is actually what I thought. And I love the parent-teacher conference days. I get so much out of that. But I lost my train of thought. So on the first day of school, the students' half day, that will allow for you to make some classroom changes if needed.
Right.
And then you would go in Monday and Tuesday, is that right? And have your in-service days, and then you would start.
We actually start on that. Tuesday.
So start on the Tuesday.
Right.
So you'll be able to get all your ducks in a row on that Friday and the Monday.
I hope so.
Okay.
We should. We need that. We really, what I've heard is they like that day in between for that reason, because we can project how many students we're going to have, but it's nice to have that day, and it seems to settle things a little bit. So that's the reason you have that day there in between.
Thank you.
It is a good day for catch-up, so to speak.
Right.
Ms. Ranier?
I emailed you. My question is about the holiday break.
Mm-hmm.
It just seems that when you look at the date that they're not coming back until January the 8th, that seems so late when we worry so much about making sure we get our teaching days in. But looking at the calendar, if you don't get out until whatever the date is, the 20th.
21st.
That's
Or
Thursday.
20th. 20th half day.
20th is the last day.
Wednesday is a half day.
Last day.
Yeah.
I would almost be in favor of backing that up so that we would start earlier in January. This is just me, I understand. But I always felt like people needed a little bit of extra time before the holidays to get ready for them. It just seems like that's so late, January 8th. Now, are the students do return on that day rather than teachers having an in-service day when they first go back.
Right.
So that's a difference. And then going into May, then again, teachers have to come back in on the day after, I started to say Labor Day, Memorial Day. I know we work that out sometimes, but That's my concern.
Okay. I think with that, and the last day I'm going to leave alone. But I think if we did not have a match of the county calendar on that, if we were to come in any earlier, I don't think we'd have students there. I think if we tried to come back in before the 5th, or before the 8th, I think if we tried to come in the 3rd or the 4th, I just don't think we'd have students there. And there again, I think having two full weeks there instead of coming in on our Wednesday or Thursday. Now, next year may be different. The county may do something different, but I don't like coming in one, and we can do, but I just don't like coming in 1 or 2 days there. I think those 1 or 2 days would be wasted, and we'd have a lot of absenteeism, where if you're coming back in on that Monday, I think you've got a better shot at having
I think it just, this
folks
time
there.
is because of the dates, the days of the week, the way they fall.
Right.
Every so often, we're going to get messed up, and I think that's
right.
what's kind of blowing my mind along with my migraine. But I just, that was always an issue after Memorial Day and
Right.
that kind of thing. And I know the teachers always liked going back for the in-service day without the children after the holiday as well.
Mr. Ballard?
No, this is something that I want to just throw out and, thinking outside the box. So going forward, I know that we're starting at the end of July 31st. And so we've got to get all the physical plants started up and get ready to run. And August is the hottest month of the year. Its average temperatures, I checked it, is 90 degrees every day in August. So in our aspirations to be green, somehow we need to take a look and also look at the economics of the total economics of backing that off, where you're starting later in the year. And I know the first answer is going to be, well, we can't do that, but I like to think about things we can do and not study so much about the things that we can't do. And so anyway, not today, but just down the road, I'd like for that to be something that we can discuss and talk about and take a look at. And I know the county is an issue, but then, I don't know how much the county, they may get right on board with something like that. But then again, they may not. But anyway, thinking outside the box, I think is something we need to consider. Again, and getting to Ms. Rainier's point, the days that we take out, we have to, I tend to think that maybe if we compact and tighten things up a little bit, then we don't have the gaps in between the times when we have to restart the engine every time. So that's just a comment and something I'd like to put on the table to discuss as we go down the road.
There is, always has been, this thing about starting school after Labor Day. However, if you go back and look at, we're looking at 4, 5, 8 days. All right, if we wait till after Labor Day to start, and we have to add on those 8 days, then we're going to be the middle of June getting out of school.
Well,
Now, the only way to do away with that sort of thing is to not have a fall break, not have a spring break, not have as much time at Thanksgiving and all that sort of thing. But I think you'd get thrown under the bus and driven on top of if you did that.
and another,
Because that's got to be that's the norm today, even though, people, and I understand where you're coming from. August is hot, but June can be hot as well. So it's either or, one way or the other. I think.
Sometimes January's hot.
yes, and December for sure.
We are in Tennessee.
Part of
And March may be really cold
No.
and snow,
I
and you
don't
love that word,
I
don't
love that word.
Part of this also has been the state has sort of gone in different directions and wanted to make every system comply with a Tennessee calendar, for lack of better terms. They wanted to set the calendar. So there was a lot of dissent among the groups and not wanting to do that because we felt that earlier we get them in more time before testing, I think. But I grew up in the Northwest, Midwest, whatever, and we started after Labor Day. We never had a fall break, ever. One time for spring break, weather was beautiful. We went away, went to Florida, came back, and it snowed Sunday night. We were out on Monday, so that was exciting. But yeah, we did that, and it didn't have fall break. We did have like a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks at Christmas. But for instance, when I graduated, our graduation was June the 7th. So we always had to go 1 week into June.
Well, if like I say, if you take out all those days,
Right.
and we all can remember where Thanksgiving you got out Thursday and Friday.
Right.
But see, that's even changed today. So if you're going to have days out of school during the school year, then you're going to have to add them somewhere, either in the beginning or at the end. You need a motion for this calendar to be approved. So I'm going to ask, is there a motion to approve the calendar as you see printed in front of you?
I so move.
Thank you, Mr. Settles. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Ballard. Any other discussion? All in favor of approving the calendar as printed, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? And
Nay.
one opposition. Okay, thank you. All right, the calendar is approved. Next item.
Okay. Reports and information, and at this time, I'm going to introduce Kim Frank, and I'm going to thank her for being in Murfreesboro City. At the same time, I'm going to thank the counselors for their work. It's been really remarkable. I know that the state has contacted me at least a couple of times to talk about how we have shifted our roles of our counselors. And so I just really am proud of what these folks have done, and I appreciate their being here tonight so that they can share what they're doing. But when we talk about the whole child, if there were a group of people that really were responsible for making this district really centered on the whole child, it would be the folks in front of you. So I'm glad they're here tonight.
Good evening. Before your next school board meeting, we will celebrate National School Counselor Week. That's February 6th through 10th. And we are blessed to have outstanding school counselors in the Murfreesboro City Schools who serve many different roles and have many different responsibilities. Tonight, they would like to highlight some of those roles and responsibilities for you.
Hi, I'm a school counselor, and I'm a fighter. I'm not going to hit you, but a fighter means that I'm an advocate for a person without a voice. And sometimes that's another teacher, sometimes it can be a parent, but most often it's a child, and most often it's one child at a time. Like one child who's a great student, and she's academically sound, and she's well behaved, and she's worried to death that her family will be deported. And I'll get emotional talking about her. But she needs a safe place to talk and to be assured that when she comes to school, she can relax and she can learn. Or there's one child who's really behind academically, and he tells me stories about staying in a car and people who use needles. And he needs an advocate to access where he enters academically and to start making progress socially and emotionally. And that one child is doing that. Or the one child who's just not acting like herself. We've all kind of noticed she needs help understanding why her body doesn't feel the same, and somebody that will bring parents and teacher and doctor all together. And that one child is getting treatment from a children's hospital now, and she has a good prognosis. So a counselor is a fighter for one at a time, but every time matters.
Advocate. As a school counselor, I advocate for children, teachers, and parents on a daily basis. Now, the definition of advocate has a couple of words that are important for a school counselor. Those are words like help and assist. And those two words are at the core of everything we do as school counselors. I advocate for my teachers, for my parents, and yes, of course, my students. You may ask, how do you advocate for them? Well, for my students, it could simply be helping them when I find out that that student is living in a car with their parents, helping that parent to locate resources so that they can improve their living situation and not have to be in a car. And for the teacher, I advocate when I help them with the difficult parent meeting and navigate that situation so that we can get what that student needs so that they can be better in the classroom. I also work with that teacher inside the classroom and help to develop interventions on a daily basis for students, and I help that teacher to look through new eyes and understand what that student may be going through and things that the teacher may not have even thought of. Advocacy for a school counselor is defined as helping someone to be their best. It's at the heart of what all school counselors do. I am a school counselor, and I am an advocate.
I am a listener. As a school counselor, I get the opportunity to carefully listen to our students, parents, and faculty. This allows me to truly hear all that they have to say. When our students understand that they can come to me to express concerns, problems, or just share things going on in their lives, they feel supported and respected. The students can speak their feelings out in a safe place with a caring adult. We are often able to resolve conflicts together and find solutions to problems. As a result, our students are often able to go back to the classroom and continue on their day of learning. This helps our students and families to know just how valuable they are. I am a professional school counselor.
I inspire attendance. I'm a reason to attend. I identify and provide interventions aimed at motivating students to come to school. I recognize and reward students for improved attendance. I make students and their parents feel welcome at my school through a safe, respectful environment. I collaborate with teachers and administrators during planning, implementation, and evaluation of classroom and school-wide programs. These programs enhance the overall school climate and encourage attendance by engaging students. A student that attends school consistently is more likely to be successful in their academics as well as their social supports. I have the expertise to work with all stakeholders to provide interventions aimed at improving attendance because every day does matter. I am a school counselor.
Optimist. Never, can't, won't ever. These words have to remain unspoken when it comes to discussing the outlook for a child's future. As a school counselor, I am committed to having hope and finding solutions even in the most unfavorable circumstances. Whether a school counselor hears he comes from a broken home, or he has a diagnosis, or nothing seems to motivate her, our response always has to be, let's help them learn. A child's past or present obstacles don't have to determine his or her future outcome. It's my responsibility and my pleasure to deliver this message of hope to teachers, parents, and to students themselves. After all, I've seen the power of this optimism. I know firsthand that telling a child, I believe in you, can make him come from under a desk, Stop tantruming and appropriately face a problem that may have seemed unfaceable just a few minutes prior. I have seen that when I tell a teacher, we're going to work through this, it can ignite in that teacher the will to persevere and tackle a seemingly impossible situation. I'm a voice of hope in my school community. I'm an optimist. I'm a school counselor.
Character education. Character education is everything we do, good and bad. Everything that we do shapes the character of the kids we interact with. It's in the way we walk, the behaviors we model, the values we transmit. Concepts that now and in the past have fallen under this term include social and emotional learning, moral reasoning, life skills education, violence prevention, critical thinking, conflict resolution, and mediation. A school counselor's goal when implementing character education is to have students define, understand, and apply a specific character trait within their lives. All students possess many positive character traits. It is the school counselor's role to help students identify and label these traits, which can also be referred to as broadening a child's vocabulary. This, in return, allows students to begin to relate and connect with those that share the same positive character traits and join together to educate others and demonstrate their knowledge of character education. I am a school counselor, and I implement character education.
I am a soft spot to land. For a lot of kids, they don't have any place to land. Unfortunately, this is all too common. To land when they find out that their mom has cancer, or when they tell me they wish they weren't alive anymore. When they get evicted from their house and have to live out of their car, or when they ask me if they can have a bigger pair of shoes because their toes keep rubbing on the end of their shoe. Or when a teacher is at her wit's end and just needs to vent. Or when a coworker dies and there are no words to say. But to land into a listening ear, a non-judgmental voice, eyes that can see that you're hurting, and into open arms. To land with a person who wishes that they could fix all of your problems and wish that they could disappear. To land with someone who will be there with you so that you don't have to do everything on your own. I am a soft spot to land.
Relationships. The foundation of a school counselor's job is based on and building and maintaining positive relationships with students, parents, teachers, administration, and community members. I am honored that students trust me with their personal stories, although at times they are not always easy to hear. Our students struggle with adult situations on a daily basis, such as having no food or running water, living in a car or a motel, loss of a parent due to incarceration, and having to see or be a victim of abuse and neglect. Not only do our students confide in us, but the parents, the teachers, and the community members also reach out for support. As a school counselor, I believe we are core to the school. We have so many branches we must extend in order to help all students achieve in the areas of academic, career, post-secondary, as well as social and emotional skills. Our relationships that we build are based on trust, respect, empathy, listening and caring about another human being's needs. We often put others before ourselves. Relationships are essential in the job that we do. It allows us to shape our students' future. People often ask why I love to be a school counselor, and I tell them my kids are the most wonderful kids in the world, and there's no place I'd rather be.
Caregiver. I'm a caregiver. I am that person that students look for in the morning and afternoon to get hugs and smiles, which I gladly give. I'm that person that students ask to see when they are sad or scared. I am that person students report to when someone is bullying or hurting them. I am that person students rely on for weekend food, backpacks, and clothes. I am a school counselor that cares and loves all 480 of her students.
Mediator.
he said this, she said that, and there's something in between. That's where I come in. We all experience times, especially nowadays, that we need to have someone help us navigate when there's this difficult situation in front of us. My role is helping those who are struggling through conflict to help find all parties gain a necessary way to find a viable solution to their struggles. This is one of my favorite ways to support the students that I work with every day. I'm a mediator, and I'm a school counselor.
Teacher. I am a teacher. Though I never thought of myself that way or imagined that that's what I would be, I don't teach reading or science or math, so I imagine others may not see me that way either. But I am a teacher. I teach emotional regulation, I teach good hygiene, I teach social skills, I teach tolerance, I teach love. I teach the skills that don't show up on a standardized test. I teach the skills that students have to have if they're going to be able to succeed on that same standardized test. I teach the skills that the students need to be able to succeed in reading and science and math. I teach the skills that the students have to succeed in this life. I am a teacher.
Data analyst. I analyze school achievement, attendance, behavioral, and social-emotional data using validated and research-based assessments in order to collaboratively address the changing needs of the whole child. I proactively meet with teachers, parents, support staff, and other stakeholders to set specific and measurable goals designed to increase a student's ability to learn. This team combines their expertise, professionalism, and experience for one purpose: helping students achieve their highest potential. I'm a data analyst. I'm a school counselor.
Counselor. Counseling is a seemingly simple concept, but this is a skill that I have spent many years honing. I counsel students to help them transform and realize their potential, but in the process, I have also been transformed. My understanding has increased, my empathy strengthened, my perspective broadened, and my heart softened. With these powerful and humbling skills, I enter my school building, not knowing what my day will bring. I may encounter a student who recently lost a parent, so I pull out my grief counseling resources and call her in, prepared with a box of tissues and a shoulder to cry on. There may be a student who is overwhelmed and feels his problems are as high as a mountain, so I grab my climbing gear, empathy, unconditional positive regard, and a solution-focused approach, and prepare to begin my ascent. I can sense when a student is getting in her own way because of the thoughts that race through her head. When we spend time together, I teach her how to change her thoughts using cognitive behavioral therapy. There's a group of students that don't know how to be successful in the classroom, so in small group, I use a research-based curriculum to teach them skills for learning. The needs of my students are constantly changing and evolving, so I must as well. I stay abreast of the best practices and incorporate new standards into my program. Though my roles are varied, my goal is one: to empower students to be successful in their academic, personal, and career goals. I am a school counselor.
All. We support all students, no matter what they're experiencing at the time. We do all of the things that these counselors have talked about tonight. And we do them because we want to be effective counselors, and also because we want to see students live up to their full potential. So with that said, on behalf of all the school counselors at Murfreesboro City Schools, we would like to present to you this visual that we created so that you can see that as school counselors, we bridge the gaps for our students. So we'd like to present this to Chair Butch Campbell.
Can we find a place in our central office to hang this?
We can. And I won't put it in my office, but I would like to. We could. That would be a good thing.
Thank
Absolutely.
you, ladies, very much. Very much.
That was a beautiful presentation, girls. Thank you so much. It was really, really nice.
We appreciate the work you do every day, and I liked one that said I'm a teacher as well, because I think many times people don't consider counselors as teachers, and they are, because they're teaching all the skills and all the things that each one of these ladies presented to us tonight. Thank you for a job well done.
Yeah.
Next item, Dr. Gilbert.
The next item is for Mr. Anderson, except before he does that, you know, Mr. Settles was talking about at the last meeting, he was talking about the school district, and he was talking about it being a good school district. And I think tonight has really been evidence of that. I think the fact that we hold school counselors in such high regard in what they do. And I need you to understand that since it's School Board Appreciation Week, especially, that would not be possible, because that doesn't happen in every school district. And so teaching the whole child, working with the whole child, and understanding that until you work with that whole child, you're not going to have academic success, is something that it takes vision from a board to understand. So I want to thank you tonight for that. Mr. Anderson.
It's tough to follow, Dr. Gilbert.
That's right. Let's see how good you are.
I'm all numbers, so your budget totals through December 31st, which is the 50% time of our fiscal year. It shows that we're having a net income of negative $1,079,000. Last year at this time, we were negative $2,584,000. So our cash position is obviously better operationally wise. We're in a better position than we were last year at this time. On the revenue side, our property tax collections are up $109,000 over last year, and our sales tax collections are up over $353,000 over last year. Now, remember, we did include numbers in our budget to show for additional revenues, but we are increasing, which is a good sign. And once again, please shop locally. Keep the money here on the taxes. On the expenditure side, we're at 42.7% for year to date, and through December 31st. And last year, we were exactly at 42.7%. So expenditure-wise, we're right where we should be at this time. I don't know if anyone has any questions. I'll be glad to answer them.
Any questions on the financial report? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other business to come before this board tonight? I think, speaking on behalf of everybody, we certainly do appreciate the recognition that we've got, and we don't do it for recognition, but we do it for employees and for students, and I think we all will agree to that. We will not have a regular meeting on February the 14th. We'll see you back on the 28th if we don't see you before then. Have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Ballard. Have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Settles. All in favor? Good night.